I have very mixed feelings about this lens. On one hand, I do think it's one of the best budget zooms you can buy, and on the other, I think it's terribly overhyped for its performance. So let me tell you my experience with this lens. The lens, of course, is the Tokina AT-X 28 to 70mm f2.6 to 2.8 AF Pro. But why do YouTubers obsess over this lens? Well, apparently it was made in the same factory as the expensive... Basically, people believe that these lenses were made in the same factory as some of the more expensive cinema zooms, and they also believe it uses the same glass. I'm not going to go into full detail about that. If you want more information, go ahead and watch 28 All Day's video on that. He goes more into like the technical and historical info. In this video, I'm going to talk about my personal experience with this lens and who I think it caters to the best. First off, this lens is not really usable at f2.6 to 2.8. Even on my Blackmagic 6K, it looks a little bit too hazy for my liking. f4 is the highest aperture I will use on this lens, especially outside when the sun's out. Which brings me to my next gripe about this lens: the flaring and contrast loss when shooting towards light. Now keep in mind, I'm used to shooting with older lenses, so being optically perfect is not something I expect. But I've used this lens outside in running gun situations, and I do not prefer it. I usually try my best to not shoot towards the sun and to shoot in shade. And usually at that point, I'm shooting at f5.6 and I'm using an ND filter at the front. Now it's not terrible, but whenever I'm shooting client work with it, I do keep in the back of my mind how much of that contrast I'm going to be able to get back in post. Now I've been pretty negative about this lens so far, so I'm going to lighten the mood and talk about some things I like about it, starting with the price. This lens can be found on eBay for under $200, and that's what makes it so hard to say no to. The body itself feels pretty solid, although the focus throw is very short, but it does have hard stops unlike some modern photo lenses. Also, the lens filter thread does not rotate when you move the focus back and forth. And one of the biggest reasons why videographers love this lens, the parfocal ability. Essentially meaning you can focus on a subject and adjust the focal length back and forth without having to adjust the focus itself. It's very handy for crash zooms if that's your thing. A couple of weeks ago, I had the chance to shoot a bumper video featuring AJ McQueen, thanks to my friend Lauren. This was her shoot, and I was there as a handheld cam op with my Zcam M4 using the Tokina. On this shoot specifically, I think the images came out great, but then again, this is a controlled environment with no bright light sources coming from behind the subject, so this is really the best case scenario for any lens. Still, for $200, this is pretty hard to beat. I think a better alternative would be the Nikkor 28 to 70 2.8, but that's assuming you can find a good copy for under $250. And not to mention, the focus throw on that's going to be very, very small, and there's no hard stops, and it's pretty inaccurate. The Nikkor will also just destroy the Tokina on every single optical aspect, so there's also that. In my opinion, this lens is good for people who are shooting things of higher resolution. When I was using my Blackmagic Micro and I used this lens, I did not like it very much because the softness that this lens had, combined with the 1080p resolution of that Super 16 sensor, just didn't look good to me, in my opinion. I mean, it didn't look terrible, but I would just have to stop it down all the time. At least when I'm shooting with my Blackmagic or my Zcam and I'm using this lens, I don't really have to worry about that. It makes the image a little bit soft, but it makes it look very good. If you're shooting outside, most likely you will never shoot at f2.8. And most likely, if you don't have one, you're gonna want to get a matte box. So with all that being said, I'm not gonna lie, I changed my opinion on this lens as I was writing notes down and looking back at my footage. I think optically speaking, if you're looking for a clinical look, this lens is not for you. Look somewhere else. And because the f2.8 is very soft, at least for me on my copy, I just shoot it at f4 at the most. So this is technically a f4 lens for me. So that pretty much sums up this video about this lens that I can't get my head around if I really like it or not. Sometimes I'll reach for it depending on what I'm shooting, and other times I'll avoid it. So do you have a copy of this lens? Does your lens perform great? Does it perform better than mine? Please let me know. I've had some people say that I just have a bad copy, but I don't know, my copy looks pretty good to me. The glass is completely clear. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more.